When you think about investing in ETFs, one of the first fund managers that always come in mind is Vanguard. This company that currently ranks as the second largest asset management firm in the world with more than $8.4 trillion of asset under management has some of the best ETFs in the world.
Yeah, baby!
In this video, I will present to you what are the top 5 best ETFs that you should buy and hold forever to become a future millionaire. So I will present to you some really well diversified funds from Vanguard that will help you to double and even triple your money only in a few years. And at the end of the video, I will present to you how personally I would create my own portfolio with those 5 funds, and I will present to you one fund that I would totally avoid buying in 2022. But before to start the video, go in the comment section and let me know what is your current favorite Vanguard funds that you do hold. And now let's jump to my pick number 1. As Warren Buffett would say, investing in the S&P 500 should be in the mind of any intelligent investor. Indeed, the S&P 500 has returned on average about 10% per year with consistency. It is why my first choice has stopped with the S&P 500 Index ETF of Vanguard with the ticker VOO. With its insanely low management fees of about 0.03%, it is one of the cheapest funds on all the market. Indeed, if you would invest $1,000 in that fund, you would only need to pay $0.03 per year. Also, if you would like to invest in Google or Amazon, for example, and that you don't want to invest thousands of dollars in it, well, what you could do is only buy one share of VOO for about $350 per share. And this will not only give you a portion of Google and Amazon, but of more than 500 different companies all around the US. Indeed, as a tracker, its role is to track the performance of an index that regroups the 500 biggest companies in the US. And technically, the S&P 500 has about 504 different stocks in it, and VOO ETF has about 505 different stocks. As I share with you, this ETF has the role to track the 505 biggest American companies in terms of market cap. And so we can see that the main companies are Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Tesla, and Alphabet. And these 5 companies represent by themselves about 20% of the total ETF. We see that the tech is the main asset class of this ETF with about 27.4% of it. And after, we can see that the healthcare with companies like Johnson & Johnson comes at the second place. After, we have the consumer discretionary, and finally the financials in the 4th place. And you can see that on 10 years, this ETF has been reaching about 14% of annualized return yearly. So if you had invest $10,000 10 years ago in 2012, well, nowadays you would be worth about $36,000 with this ETF. This would be a great investment for anyone that wants to start to invest in the stock market without taking any big risk. But another great investment that you could make is to buy the entire stock market. To do that, you could buy the Vanguard Total Stock Market ETFs with the ticker VTI. As his name is saying it, when you buy this ETF, it's like if you're buying a small portion of the entire stock market. Indeed, this ETF will track the CRSP Total US Index Market. Just like VOO, it has a super cheap management fee of only 0.03% per year. This fund regroups some large, mid, and small cap equity diversified across growth and value styles, and this is why this fund regroups more than 4,100 different stocks from all around the world. And so we can see here that the same stocks that we've seen in VOO are still in the top 5, except Tesla that is new. But knowing that there are more than 4,000 different stocks in the fund, it makes that the ponderation allocated to those big 5 companies will be lower compared to VOO. But the tech is still the number 1 sector in the fund, followed by the consumer discretionary, the healthcare, the industrials, and the financials. So you see that it is way more balanced compared to the first ETF. However, you see that on 10 years, the return has been slightly less than what we have seen with the first ETF with about 13%. Your $10,000 invest 10 years ago would be worth nowadays about $34,600. The big difference with VOO is that with this index, you can find some companies from small cap to large cap. This is really interesting for the diversification of your overall portfolio, which will obviously reduce your overall risk. And if you're not trying to time the market, as I told you in my previous video, and that you're just trying to enter the market and buy the market because you're positive and bullish about it, because you think that at the end of the day and in the long run, as you should, the market will normally tend to go up. Well, VTI is a great option for that. And for my third pick, I've decided to present to you an ETF that is on the market that is not really known well by us. So I would decide to invest in the Vanguard Small Cap Index ETF with the ticker VB. This fund is tracking the index of the CRSP US Small Cap Index. What is really hard to analyze with the small cap is the fact that they have the aspiration to become eventually some big and large cap, but they still don't have the resources and not necessarily the potential for everyone to succeed. However, since there are more volatility and more risk for those companies, that makes that in the long run, there are also more chances that you lose your investment.
Oh my God! Okay, it's happening. Everybody stay calm.
But technically, what are small caps? Normally, to be considered as a small cap, you need to be between $300 million and $2 billion of market capitalization. This is why the 10 biggest holdings of that fund are way less known compared to the 2 first funds that I've presented to you in that video. And so we can see that the ponderation of them are also super small, since we see that the number one pick in that ETF is only 0.39% of the fund. The sectors in general are also well balanced, and we can see that the industrials come at the first place. And after, you have the consumer discretionary once again with about 15%, followed by the financials with about 15% as well, and finally the technology with about 12%. So you see that this fund is well underweight in tech compared to the 2 first funds. However, this fund still has more than 1,500 different stocks in it. And on 10 years on average, this fund has performed of about 11.25% per year. Which makes that with $10,000 invest 10 years ago, this $10,000 would be worth nowadays about $29,000. This ETF is also really interesting, since it has a net value compared to an S&P 500 tracker, since it gives you some analyst perspective on some companies that are not necessarily well known by the people and that could have a lot of potential to fail. Indeed, those companies are in the middle of a cycle where they want to become a large cap, so we don't have a lot of information on them. It means that having a great basket of different companies with some great potential, but that are picked by experts, could be a great idea in that case. Now my next pick will add some great geographic diversification, so I've decided to pick the Vanguard Total International Stock Index ETF with the ticker VXUS. This ETF is tracking the FTSE All Cap Global US Index. This fund is mainly focusing in the Europe, the emerging market, and the Pacific. It is an interesting fund for anyone that would like to invest potentially in different economies. The ETF has an astonishing number of stocks of more than 7,800 different stocks spread all around the world. As you can see, most of the stocks comes from Asia or Europe, and you see that in the top 10 you have companies like Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Co., Nestle, Tencent, Roche, and Samsung. However, we can see that on a 10 years period, this ETF hasn't been able to reach the same point as the 3 other ETF that I've presented to you early on. On average, this fund has been doing about 5.33% per year. With $10,000 10 years ago, nowadays you would be worth about $16,800. This fund is really interesting since it gives you some great geographic diversification that you wouldn't necessarily find in any other funds. However, keep in mind that investing in that fund is a little bit more risky than in some other funds because you have different international risk. For example, you could have the political risk but also the currency risk. And finally, for my last pick, I've decided to choose an ETF that during those crisis time with the high volatility that we live on the market, that could offer you some stable income and that is a little bit safer compared to other ETFs. To do that, I've decided to present to you the Vanguard High Yield Dividend Index ETF with the ticker VYM. So this ETF, as you can understand by the name, is mainly investing into some great and strong companies that offers some great dividends to their shareholders. And usually when we are in time of bear market and recession, those kind of companies will perform way better compared to the growth stock. For a cheap cost of only 0.06% of MER, you receive more than 443 different dividend aristocrat stocks. This of course includes the famous Johnson & Johnson, but also ExxonMobil, JP Morgan, Home Depot, Pfizer, and AbbVie. And as you can guess, the financial comes at the leader in terms of sector with about 20% of the entire ETF. And after you have the healthcare, the consumer staples, and finally the industrials. On 10 years, you would have made about 11.73% of return. This makes that your $10,000 would have now been worth about $30,000. This ETF would be the perfect combo between some potential growth but also some great cash flow. And this is really what is interesting for people just like me that loves to receive cash flow from different stocks and companies, because you invest in this kind of ETF and this kind of fund that will give you some great dividend. However, the ETF that I would never invest in that right now in 2022 is the Vanguard Total Bond Market ETF with the ticker BND. As you can see on my videos, I am not a big fan of bonds, especially right now in the conditions that we are with some high inflation. I believe that dividend stocks, in my opinion, are better than bonds. I don't really think that the current rates are worth it, especially knowing that the inflation is through the roof during the past couple of months. And so, knowing the current market conditions, if I had to build my own portfolio with those 5 funds, I would allocate about 25% to VU, about 25% to VTI, 25% to VYM, 15% to VB, and finally 10% to VXUS. Of course, in that video, I haven't been able to present to you different other interesting funds, for example, the real estate fund of Vanguard that is really interesting in my opinion. But make sure to join the NOL family by subscribing to the channel for only $0.0 if you want to see some future Vanguard videos. And to see what are the best ETFs that you need to buy in 2022 if you want to make a lot of monthly cash flow, check out the video that is going to be right over here, and I will see you there. Peace!